"You are a disgrace to this country." Elizabeth Warren said it without raising her voice. No shouting, no drama, just calm words. But the silence that followed was louder than anything ever heard on that debate stage. Every camera zoomed in. Every heartbeat paused. And in that moment, America watched something it had never seen before. Truth spoken without fear. If you want more of these raw, emotional stories, make sure to subscribe now. You will not want to miss what happens next. It was supposed to be just another televised debate. Another night of jabs and rehearsed applause, but Elizabeth came in without a script. She came in with a truth no one else dared to say aloud. While others played it safe, she looked Trump in the eye and said the words that had been sitting in millions of hearts for years. And what followed was not planned by anyone. Trump laughed at first. That usual arrogant smile. He leaned forward to interrupt her, but she raised her hand slightly. And he stopped. Just like that. The crowd went still. Moderators looked confused. Elizabeth did not move her eyes. She just said, "You built your name on fear. You sold power wrapped in cruelty. But when this country needed a leader, all you gave them was a brand." A woman in the audience gasped. Trump turned red. But before he could speak, Elizabeth turned away from him, not with fear, but with something that shook him more. Disinterest, as if he was no longer worth speaking to. And that is when Melania stood up. No one expected her to be there. She was not on the guest list, not supposed to be seated in that section, but there she was. Calm, silent, and strangely emotional. Her eyes locked on Elizabeth. And then, she walked forward. Security froze. The moderators froze. Even Trump blinked in disbelief. But Melania kept walking. Her heels echoed across the wooden floor of the stage. And then, with the whole country watching, she stood face to face with Elizabeth. There were no microphones near them. But a whisper was caught by one of the close-range boom mics. A whisper so soft it almost got buried in the room's tension. "You are right," Melania said, "but you do not know the whole story." Elizabeth tilted her head, confused but focused. "Then tell me," she replied quietly, but Melania did not speak again. She turned to the crowd, looked at Trump for a long, cold second, and then walked off stage. Not backstage, but through the crowd, alone. And that walk, that silent walk, felt like a warning. People in the audience started murmuring. The energy shifted. Something personal had just happened. Something real. And no one understood it yet. Not even Elizabeth. But what had Melania meant? What did Elizabeth not know? And why did Trump look shaken? Not angry, but afraid. What secret had just walked out of that room? Elizabeth did not move for several seconds. Her hand stayed at her side, her eyes fixed on the space where Melania had just stood. For a woman who had faced countless storms in politics, this felt different. There was no applause now, just silence, thick, uncomfortable silence. Something had shifted in the room, and everyone felt it, even if they could not explain why. Trump adjusted his tie. It was the first time all night his voice had gone quiet. He mumbled something to the moderator, but the mic did not catch it. His eyes darted toward the audience, as if looking for someone. Then he leaned back, arms folded, pretending nothing had happened. But his left leg bounced up and down under the table. Elizabeth stepped back from the podium, then leaned slightly toward her mic. "I think the American people deserve truth," she said calmly. "And I think we just got closer to it than ever before." The moderators tried to redirect. They asked another candidate to speak, tried to bring the debate back to policy. But no one was listening. Not really. The camera feeds, the live tweets, the audience. They all stayed locked on the unexpected emotional crack that had opened between Elizabeth, Melania, and Donald Trump. Backstage, Elizabeth's aide handed her a folded note. It was not from Melania. No name. Just a simple line, handwritten in careful block letters. "If you want to know what he took from me, ask about the woman in room 241. Elizabeth read it twice. Her fingers tightened around the paper. She did not show it to anyone. Not yet. Instead, she slipped it into her pocket and walked straight toward the back exit, ignoring the press, skipping the post-debate interviews, not even waiting for her team. Outside, the air was cold. A black SUV waited by the curb, but she waved it off. She needed air. NSHE needed clarity. She needed to figure out why Melania would risk saying something like that in public, and what it meant. Who was the woman in room 241? Was it from the past? A hospital room? A hotel? A prison? Elizabeth kept walking. Her phone buzzed constantly in her coat. Calls, messages, alerts. All ignored. Her mind replayed Melania's whisper again and again. You do not know the whole story. It was not a defense of Trump. It did not feel like a threat either. It felt like a warning, a quiet signal, and that made it even more dangerous. 2 blocks later, Elizabeth turned a corner and stopped. Standing near the edge of the alley was a woman, mid-50s, pale face, dressed in a plain gray coat, eyes tired but alert. She stepped forward slowly, and without saying her name, she asked, "Did you get the note?" Elizabeth nodded. "I am the woman from room 241. No introduction, no small talk, just that sentence. And in that moment, Elizabeth realized this story was much darker than politics, and it had just begun. Elizabeth did not speak. She only stared, unsure whether to believe this woman or to be cautious. The street was quiet, the city noise dulled by distance. For a few seconds they just stood there, 2 strangers bound by something they did not yet understand. The woman's voice was low but steady. "My name does not matter. What matters is what he did, and who helped him." Elizabeth's heartbeat slowed as she studied her. No visible fear, no anger, just exhaustion, like someone who had waited too long to be heard. "Room 241, Elizabeth finally said. "What happened there?" The woman hesitated. "It was not just a room. It was a deal. I was brought in to be silent. I was paid to disappear. But I did not take the money." Elizabeth's breath caught slightly. Disappear from what? The woman looked away for a moment, eyes flickering toward a flickering streetlight. He was not alone. They were all there. Men in suits. Some in uniforms. A few faces I had seen on TV now sitting in that room, asking me to lie about what I saw, and about what I heard. Elizabeth stepped closer. "And what did you see?" There was a long pause. "I saw a girl," the woman whispered. "Young, not much older than 15, scared, crying, and Trump sitting beside her with his hand on her shoulder like he owned her." Elizabeth felt something rise in her throat. Not words, just heat. Her fists clenched. Her eyes narrowed. "Why now?" she asked. "Why are you speaking now, after all these years?" "Because Melania finally looked someone in the eye," the woman said. "I waited for that. I waited to see if she still had any soul left in her. When she walked up to you tonight, I knew it was time." Elizabeth shook her head slowly. "If this is true, it will destroy people. It will burn everything to the ground." The woman nodded. "It should." Elizabeth glanced behind her. No reporters, no noise. Just the cold night and 2 women standing in its shadow. "Do you have proof?" The woman reached into her coat and pulled out a small voice recorder. Old. Scratched. She placed it gently into Elizabeth's hand. "It is not digital. They could not erase this one." Elizabeth did not press play. Not yet. Her fingers wrapped around the recorder like it was a ticking bomb. "And the girl?" she asked softly. "Is she still alive?" The woman's eyes fell to the ground. "I do not know. They never let me see her again." A wave of silence crushed over them. Elizabeth stood still, her mind spinning, her breath short. She looked down at the recorder, and for the first time tonight, her hands trembled. Behind her, somewhere in the distance, a car engine started. Elizabeth turned around slowly and saw a black sedan at the far end of the block. No headlights, just waiting, watching, and not moving. Elizabeth's instincts kicked in. She knew surveillance when she saw it. That black sedan was not a coincidence. Not on this night. Not after everything that had just happened. She slipped the recorder deep into her coat pocket and turned back to the woman. "Do they know you came to me?" she asked in a low voice. "I do not think so," the woman replied, "but they always know eventually." Elizabeth nodded once. She reached for her phone, typed out a single message to her aide. "Do not speak to press. Clear schedule. No phones." She sent it, powered the device off, and slid it back into her pocket. The woman glanced at the black car again. "I should not be seen with you," she whispered. "If they connect us—" "They already have," Elizabeth interrupted. "But I am not going to run from this." The woman gave a faint, tired smile. "That is why I chose you." Before Elizabeth could respond, the woman had already turned and walked quickly into the darkness, disappearing into a narrow side street. Elizabeth wanted to follow, to ask more, to understand the full weight of the story she had just been handed, but she knew better. Some meetings were meant to end without a goodbye. Elizabeth turned back toward the sedan. Still no headlights, still no movement. Her breath visible in the cold air, she walked calmly down the sidewalk, refusing to show fear. She did not know if they were there to scare her or to silence her, but she knew the message. We are watching. When she finally reached her building, her fingers shook slightly as she unlocked the side door. No lights on, no staff inside. Just her and the recorder in her pocket, like a secret she could not yet say aloud. Inside her apartment, she double-locked the door, closed all the blinds, and sat at her kitchen table. The recorder stared at her like it had its own heartbeat. She pressed play. At first, just static. Then, faint voices, muffled and male. She said she would talk. Does not matter. She will not. A pause. A deeper voice, unmistakable. She will do exactly what I tell her. Elizabeth froze. It was him. Not a soundbite. Not a campaign clip. It was Trump. Younger, but clearly him. The tape continued. Another voice. Shaky female. I want to go, please. Then silence. A door slammed. The girl's voice never came again. Elizabeth pressed stop. She stared at the recorder, eyes wide, lungs tight. This was not a political weapon. It was something darker. Older. Heavier. Something that had stayed buried for a reason, and now it was in her hands. She stood and poured herself a glass of water. But her hand trembled, and the glass slipped. It hit the counter and shattered. As she knelt to pick up the shards, her phone buzzed. A single text. Unknown number. You are not ready to know what she died for. Elizabeth's breath stopped. She did not respond. She just stood there, surrounded by glass, and knew this story was not about winning. It was about surviving. The floor beneath Elizabeth felt colder now. The message on her screen burned into her mind like a brand. You are not ready to know what she died for. The words echoed louder than anything she had just heard on that tape. She read it twice, then deleted it. No replies, no trace. But the question it raised would not go away. She picked up the broken glass carefully and dropped it into the bin. Blood traced a thin line down her finger, but she ignored it. Her mind was elsewhere now, in room 241, with a girl whose name she did not know and a system that had swallowed her whole. Elizabeth sat back at the table, hands flat on the surface. She needed answers, not riddles. She opened her laptop disconnected from Wi-Fi and pulled up her encrypted notes. Every lead, every article, every person linked to Trump's inner circle. She started with campaign donations, then moved to private hotel records, searching for anything tied to the number 241. Nothing came up. Not yet. She leaned back, eyes heavy. She had not eaten since morning, and the tension wrapped around her chest like a tightening rope. But she could not stop. Not after what she had heard. Not after what Melania had whispered. Then the buzzer rang. She froze. It was past midnight. No one visits unannounced at this hour. Elizabeth stood slowly, glancing toward the door, then at the recorder still lying on the table. She approached the intercom panel cautiously. There was no voice. No message. Just a soft, repeating buzz. She pressed the button. "Who is it?" No response. Again, silence. Then, finally, a voice. Low. Familiar. "It is me." It was Melania. Elizabeth's heart kicked. She opened the door without thinking, and there she was. In a long coat, no makeup, no security, no cameras. Just Melania, looking different, softer, tired, almost hollow. "I need to speak to you," she said. Elizabeth stepped aside, letting her in. No words, no pleasantries. Melania walked straight to the table and sat down in front of the recorder. She did not touch it. "I have heard that before," she said quietly. Elizabeth sat across from her, eyes narrowed. "You knew about this? About the girl?" Melania nodded once. "I did not know everything. I only knew the pain in his eyes when her name was mentioned. And I knew what kind of silence comes from guilt." Elizabeth leaned forward. Why now? Melania's hands were shaking. She clenched them in her lap. "Because I cannot carry it anymore. I have watched him ruin lives, destroy families, bury truths. But that girl, she was different. She was not just a victim. She was proof." "Proof of what?" Melania looked up. "That he was never afraid of power. He was afraid of someone who could take it away." Elizabeth stared. "The girl?" Melania nodded. "She had something. A name, a recording, a document. Something he feared, and he made sure she would never be heard." Elizabeth's voice cracked. "Is she dead?" Melania closed her eyes. "She was. Until yesterday." Elizabeth's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Melania looked her in the eye. "She is alive." Quote. For a moment, Elizabeth thought she had misheard. The idea shattered everything she had accepted in the past few hours. "Alive?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Melania nodded, slowly but without hesitation. "They told us she was gone, that there was a funeral. But it was a lie. She was hidden, not for safety, for silence." Elizabeth leaned back, trying to absorb the weight of what that meant. "Where is she?" "I do not know," Melania said. "But I know who does." Elizabeth's pulse began to race again, but this time it was different. This was not fear. It was urgency. If the girl was alive, if she could speak, then this was bigger than anyone had imagined. Not just scandal, not just corruption. It was a cover-up deep enough to trap even those closest to Trump, including Melania. Elizabeth stood and began pacing. Why would they keep her alive? Why not? "Because he needed leverage," Melania interrupted. "He needed something to threaten others. People who knew. People in power. Her life became a currency. She was too dangerous to let go, too valuable to destroy." Elizabeth stopped pacing. "And now she is free?" "I do not know how," Melania whispered, but she made contact. Elizabeth froze. "With you?" "Number with someone close to me. My former assistant. She vanished 3 years ago. I thought she had run. Turns out she was forced into silence too. And yesterday, she sent me a name. One I have not spoken aloud in years." Elizabeth's throat tightened. "Say it." Melania looked up, eyes heavy. "Claire." The name hit like a stone. Elizabeth knew that name. Not from politics, not from investigations, but from a single article she had read over a decade ago. A missing girl, 15, gone without a trace from a Florida hotel. No arrest, no body, no headlines after the first few days, just a cold silence. And now, Claire was alive. "She wants to talk," Melania said, "but only if she knows you will protect her. She does not trust the system. And she is right not to." Elizabeth sat back down, her hands folded tightly on the table. "If I take this on, I will be hunted." "You already are." "And you?" Melania's smile was thin. "I stopped being safe the moment I married him. I only stayed to delay the damage. But now it is too late to hide. Elizabeth stood up again. She walked to the window and looked outside. The black sedan was gone now, but something told her that meant nothing. They were still watching, always watching. She turned back to Melania. Set the meeting. Melania raised an eyebrow. You are sure? Elizabeth nodded once. If Claire wants to speak, I will listen. And if what she says is true, the world will hear her, no matter what it costs. Melania stood. It will cost everything. Elizabeth looked her in the eye, steady and unshaken. Then let them come. And, just like that, the war began. Not in courtrooms or campaign rallies, but in whispers, secrets, and a voice that had waited too long to be heard.